President Trump's in California. He's there to be briefed on the West Coast wildfires. As we've been talking about for the last week, California, Oregon and Washington are all affected. We know he's going to be briefed by California's governor, Gavin Newsom. He's also due to meet fire officials and some of California's other political leaders. Here's what he said ahead of those meetings.
This is one of the biggest burns we've ever seen, and we have to do a lot about forest management. Obviously, forest management in California is very important, and now it extends to Washington and extends also to Oregon. There has to be good, strong forest management, which I've been talking about for 3 years with the state, so hopefully they'll start doing that.
Well, here's California's governor, Gavin Newsom, speaking to the president about that.
We can agree to disagree, and I appreciate your frame on the politics of this. But let me just acknowledge two things briefly, and I'll turn it back to you. There's no question when you look past this decade and looking past almost 1,000+ years that we have not done justice on our forest management. I don't think anyone disputes that.
Now, it's true that the president has been talking about this issue of forest management for 3 years. Here he is at a rally in August, for example.
They have massive fires again in California. Maybe we're just going to have to make them pay for it because they don't listen to us. We say you got to get rid of the leaves, you got to get rid of the debris, you got to get rid of the fallen trees.
And in 2018, he tweeted about it, saying there's no reason for these massive, deadly and costly forest fires in California except that forest management is so poor. Billions of dollars are given each year with so many lives lost, all because of gross mismanagement of the forests. Remedy now or no more federal payments, he said. The Democrats weren't having any of it then, and to be honest, to a lesser or greater extent, they're pushing back now. In the last few days, we've had this from Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, saying the president has said it's all about raking the forest. It's just a big and devastating lie, and several state leaders echoed those sentiments over the weekend. It's also worth us being clear what we're talking about when we use the phrase forest management. Essentially, this is controlled burning during cooler months to reduce fuel for any fires that may then start. Done effectively, it can slow the spread of the fires. That may sound straightforward, but this New York magazine highlights the fact that it isn't. This article argues that to do this effectively would be a task so large it would dwarf anything humans have ever seen before, and goes on to say it would mean burning approximately 1/5 of the state of California. And of course, even if you decided to do that, inevitably that could endanger people and property. So these are very difficult balances to be struck. The New York Times has been describing the president's visit to California in these terms. In visiting charred California, Trump confronts a scientific reality he denies. The article goes on, Mr. Trump and his senior environmental officials have regularly mocked, denied or minimized the established science of human-caused climate change. Well, we've also heard from the Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden on the broader issue of climate change and the president's approach to it. Here's what he said.
If we have 4 more years of Trump's climate denial, how many suburbs will be burned in wildfires? How many suburban neighborhoods will have been flooded out? How many suburbs will have been blown away in superstorms? If you give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze?
Let's turn back to that issue of forest management. Here's the analysis of our correspondent Peter Bowes in Los Angeles.
This is an extremely complex issue, and I think the biggest criticism of the president is that he is dramatically oversimplifying what needs to happen. There is a debate about how the forests are managed in California. Over the past many years, there's been a policy of total fire suppression. In other words, putting out all of the fires and not starting these deliberate burns that some scientists will argue there are more of these are needed to clear out the undergrowth, to clear out some of the dead trees that are standing in the forest. The beetles, the bark beetles really take their toll. I was up in Yosemite some time ago, and it's striking how many dead trees are just standing there. And there is a valid argument, I think, that perhaps more could be done focusing on those areas and getting rid of those trees. Where the president is strongly criticised is when he talks about brushing leaves and clearing the floors, which to most people here, especially those people who live in areas that continue to burn and are not anywhere close to a forest, that simply illustrates the fact that what the president is talking about isn't addressing the issue that affects so many people.
Well, let's talk about the president and his visit to California. He won't find too many political allies during these meetings. So what in practical terms can be got done?
Well, the immediate practical needs are helping those people whose lives have been devastated by these fires. And it's interesting, isn't it, that the president and the governor, Gavin Newsom, have in fact been working very closely together over the last few months, A, on the coronavirus, but B, also oftentimes behind the scenes in terms of talking about emergency aid for people who are affected by these fires. So that will be the immediate conversation, how to help people, how to very immediately find whether there are more people whose lives have been lost, perhaps bodies that haven't even been discovered yet. We're hoping that that doesn't amount to many people in California. There could be many more in the state of Oregon. But longer term, the debate will be about what the government, the federal government, is doing about climate change, and those California politicians, mostly Democrats, looking to President Trump perhaps for some acknowledgement that climate change has an effect on the wildfires and some necessary policy changes. It seems very unlikely, clearly, within the few weeks remaining of the current Trump administration, that that is going to happen. But looking ahead to the next few years, because this has become a political hot potato now, in terms of what California can expect in terms of bigger global policies that could help prevent these fires in the future.
That's Peter Bowes with us in Los Angeles. Now, let's stay with this story. The fires have killed at least 33 people so far, and dozens of people are missing. And some harrowing stories are now emerging, such as this one. This is an article in the Sacramento Bee. It tells of a husband racing back to his home to get his family out, and on the way he ends up rescuing a badly burned woman on the side of the road without realising it was his wife until she told him. Well, US media is reporting that she remains in a critical condition. I also wanted to show you these pictures from Portland in Oregon. Look at the air quality there, and hazardous air is becoming a major issue in the state. Thousands of people have had to leave their homes across Oregon. And the BBC's Aleem McBall is in the state. Here's his latest report.
It was like a journey into an eerie twilight zone. Few have been allowed here since the fires swept in with such rage. And though most people had scrambled to get out with whatever they could, it was in this area that lives had also been lost.
I had an idea the second.
There were some we found wandering and bewildered, like Larry.
I lost everything except what's in that bag. Everything. And I didn't have insurance. Out of all the hosts had insurance except for me. But
just explain where your cabin was.
my spot was right over here across from what was cabins.
Right.
It's not there anymore.
What made these fires so lethal and record-breaking was the high winds that came with them, accelerating their frightening, destructive passage through vast areas of this state.
Well, we keep hearing from those who said they felt they were fleeing for their lives, and it's only when you're on the ground and you see the destruction as we've been able to, and the warped landscape here, you start to get a sense of the nightmare that they were running from.
This family is tired of running. We found them in a displacement camp miles away. They've now fled fires 3 times in 3 different locations in the past week.
My mom had 10 minutes to get out of her place, and she got the clothes on her back and the cat, and that was it. And her house is completely annihilated. It wiped out everything she owned, and and that's what we heard was the same with ours. We're not sure as of right now. I think a lot of us are in that position of not knowing.
It was Somers Town that I'd visited earlier. The signs aren't good. For all the politics, at the heart of this disaster are hundreds of thousands of Americans who faced fear, displacement, and loss. Aleem McBall, BBC News, in Gates in Oregon.